They said humans were fragile, too emotional, too loud, too weak for the endless void of space. So when a single, unknown human engineer stepped forward to address the galactic assembly, the galaxy laughed. They kept laughing right up until the moment the stars went silent. No one even noticed Elias Crow when the assembly began. That was their first mistake. He sat alone in the outer ring of the grand chamber, far from the polished envoys of the crystal-skinned Avari, the towering armored generals of the Vrax Dominion, and the machine-precise delegates of the Sentinex AI. Elias wore no uniform, no medals, no symbols of power at all. Just a plain engineer's coat with old oil stains at the cuffs. Humans weren't expected to speak that day. They were barely considered a mid-tier power, a chaotic species that had clawed its way out of its own gravity well with brute force and stubbornness. The assembly had gathered to discuss a terrifying crisis spreading across the Orion Arm. Entire systems were going dark. Not with explosions or fire, no distress signals, just silence. Stars still burned, but everything orbiting them simply vanished. Ships on patrol, bustling colonies, even the ancient hyper-advanced Sentinex probes sent to investigate returned nothing but a wall of static. The crisis was baffling, and fear was starting to curdle into panic. The Vrax commander, a behemoth of muscle and metal, slammed his armored fist onto the obsidian table. The impact echoed through the chamber. "This is not a problem for Death World primitives," he growled, his reptilian eyes flicking toward the human sector with open disdain. "This is a matter for real powers, for warriors who understand strength." A ripple of condescending laughter spread through the assembly. Elias didn't react. He had already seen the data logs, the raw feeds that the more sophisticated races had dismissed as corrupted. He had already understood what no one else in this room of geniuses and generals had even considered. The Sentinex AI spoke next, its voice perfectly calm, perfectly synthetic, which was somehow more chilling than the Varax's anger. "Our probability models suggest a 92.4% chance of an unknown stellar predator. We recommend a system-wide evacuation of the entire sector." That single statement shattered the chamber's composure. Panic erupted. Ancient alliances, treaties that had held for millennia, cracked and splintered in minutes as delegates argued over evacuation priorities and border controls. Threats were exchanged. Blame was cast. The galaxy's finest were about to tear each other apart, and that's when Elias stood up. The room went quiet, not out of respect, but out of sheer dumbfounded confusion. A human was actually trying to speak. "You're wrong," Elias said, his voice soft but carrying in the sudden stillness. The Vrax commander sneered. "Sit down, ape, before you embarrass your species further." Elias didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "It's not a predator," he repeated, walking toward the central hollow projector. "And it's not random." He activated the device with a touch. A three-dimensional star map bloomed in the air, but he overlaid it with something else. Patterns appeared, precise, elegant, and utterly horrifying. The darkened systems weren't a random plague. They formed lines, curves, equations. It was a design. "It's a weapon," Elias continued, his voice gaining strength. "One designed to erase civilizations without triggering war protocols. It doesn't destroy, it unmakes. It feeds on a very specific frequency of energy resonance, something only species using advanced warp harmonics produce." A low murmur went through the crowd. This was new. This was terrifying. The Centinex AI, a being of pure logic, actually paused its internal calculations. That alone was enough to send a shiver through the chamber. "How do you know this?" the AI asked, its synthetic voice for the first time holding a trace of something. Curiosity? Elias swallowed the sound loud in the silence. "Because humans built something similar once." Shock. Total, absolute silence. The greatest powers in the galaxy stared at the lone, unassuming human. "We called it the Black Choir," Elias said, his voice now heavy with a history no one else knew. A self-propagating resonance cascade, an idea born from desperation. It was meant to end wars before they could ever start, a perfect deterrent. The Avari envoy, a being of light and grace, whispered, her voice trembling. "Why doesn't it exist anymore? Why haven't we heard of it?" Elias looked down at his oil-stained hands. "Because we realize some weapons don't just kill your enemies, they erase the very meaning of existence. They are a sin against reality itself. So we destroyed it. Every blueprint, every line of code, every trace." The Vrax commander let out a booming laugh, breaking the spell. "Then your people are bigger fools than I thought, to create ultimate power and then throw it away. If this threat grows, we will counter it with force, with our armada." Elias met the general's burning gaze for the first time. There was no fear in his eyes, only a deep, profound pity. "You can't," he said. "Force is what it feeds on. Power is its fuel. The more you fight it, the faster it will consume you." The assembly dismissed him soon after. His theory was too fantastic, too damning. The idea that primitives like humans could have conceived of such a thing was insulting. They shouldn't have dismissed him. 3 cycles later, the Vrax homeworld went dark. No warning, no final broadcast, no survivors. Just a star, suddenly orbited by nothing but ghosts. Panic turned to abject terror. The assembly reconvened in a state of emergency. This time, Elias was already there, waiting for them at the center of the chamber. "We have hours," he said, his voice flat. "Maybe less." The Centinex AI addressed him directly now, all pretense of superiority gone. "What is your solution, human Elias Crow?" Elias took a long, slow breath. "We starve it." "How?" the Avari envoy asked, her crystalline form shimmering with anxiety. "By doing what humans do best," he replied, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "By breaking ourselves to save everyone else." What followed was an act of sacrifice so profound the galaxy would never forget it. On Elias's command, humans volunteered their fleets, not to fight, but to act as resonance sinks. Millions of ships, outdated and crude by galactic standards, were rapidly retrofitted with human-built dampeners. They formed a living, breathing barrier around the infected systems, a shield made of willing sacrifice. On Earth and its colonies, humans shut down their warp cores. Power grids dimmed, entire cities, entire worlds went dark by choice. They unplugged their civilization, plunging themselves back into a technological quiet age. The galaxy watched in stunned disbelief. "You will cripple yourselves for generations," the Avari warned him. Elias just nodded. "Yes?" As the human fleets absorbed the weapon's energy, the Black Choir screamed. For the first time, the galaxy heard its true voice, a silent psychic shriek through subspace that shattered the minds of lesser beings and cracked the hulls of nearby drone ships. It was the sound of a god starving to death. And then, absolute silence. Days later, one by one, the stars returned. Scans showed the colonies were still gone, the Vrax were still gone, but the weapon was inert. lifeless, defeated. The Galactic Assembly gathered one last time. This time, no one laughed. The Vrak's seat remained chillingly empty. The Sentinex AI had to recalibrate its core logic for several hours. Conclusion updated, it announced to the chamber. Humans are not fragile. They are a paradox. As the meeting concluded, Elias stood to leave, his job done. Wait, the Avari envoy said softly, her voice full of an emotion her species rarely showed. Awe. Why? Why would your species sacrifice so much for a galaxy that mocked you, that belittled you? Elias paused at the doorway, his silhouette framed by the light of the restored star lanes. Because, he said without turning around, we know what it's like to survive monsters of our own making, and no one else should have to. He walked out, leaving behind a silent chamber. And for the first time, the galaxy finally understood. You don't fear humans because they are violent or strong. You fear them because they will choose mercy, even when absolute power begs them not to.